Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. Today happens to be the 84th anniversary of December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. And it also happens to be the anniversary of me being a content creator as well. I chose December 7th, 2021 to start my channel, um, mostly because Dustin from the Personal Sports Card Dad peer pressured me to do so. But I was thinking really about how I actually got here and uh, what made it so that I'm able to talk to you guys right now on a platform, and what an amazing thing it has been. It has also been very frustrating too. But getting back to December 7th, 1941, I want to kind of explain this in a roundabout way, if you will, a very strange connecting the dots. December 7th, 1941, my grandparents were already married. They had married a few months prior. And as my grandmother had said, that essentially they knew that there was going to be a war. They just didn't know when. And so my grandfather, even before he was married to my grandmother, ended up joining the Navy instead. I don't think he wanted to be drafted. So in fact, you could be drafted into the Navy. But I'm not sure about 1940, which was the first peacetime draft. And so a lot of ball players, a lot of people were being drafted into the services as early as 1940, and my grandfather wanted, I think, to avoid being drafted, so he went into the Navy. Uh, the Great Depression was it was very difficult, obviously a very difficult time, and it's a time, if you were a card collector, where instead of people not going into card collecting, more and more people end up going into card collecting, and especially in World War II as well, which really surprised me. And my grandmother was a really big baseball fan, and she didn't understand my card collection at all. She really thought that if my collection was worth as much as I said it was, then I should sell my cards, and that was it. But I don't think that she understood really why I collected cards. I don't think she understood that at all, and I'll tell you exactly why as we go forward. But uh, December 8th, 1941, December 7th already happens. December 8th, my grandfather gets the call that he's on active duty and that they have to report to Washington, D.C. And he's a photographer at this point. Photographer, I think first class. I'm not. He almost made petty. He almost became a petty officer. But there was this, about the same time, 1941, late 1942. My grandmother ends up joining the OSS, and by this time she's already a pilot. She got her pilot's license in like 1938 or so, and this is actually how they met. Uh, she she and my grandfather knew each other in high school, but they didn't like each other, or at least she didn't like him, and so he was my grandmother's flight instructor. And as you guys can see here in this photo, I'm not entirely sure if that's a Piper Cub, but my grandmother flew airplanes in the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s. And it's something that I could never ever do in a million years because I'm deathly afraid of heights. And I've told you guys about my own adventures. I've flown out of the window at least twice, uh, and so I'm deathly afraid of heights. So my hat's off to anybody who wants to be a pilot. And I guess my grandmother really wanted to be a pilot. And it may have been easier back then when she was a pilot than it is today. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, my grandmother had a 50-year career in the government, and she had always told me stories about what it was like for her in World War II. And uh, we used to watch Julia Child on TV all the time. And Julia Child, obviously, she had a cooking show, uh, The French Chef. And so she'd always say like, "Oh, I knew Julia. Oh, we were good friends." And I'd be like, "Yeah, Grandma, right, sure, okay, well, whatever you say, Grandma, sure." But as it turned out, they were actually very good friends, and they trained together in Washington D.C. in 1942, and uh, their records match at least a month apart in date. And Julia Child went over to the CBI Theater, and it looks like my grandmother actually went over as well at some point. Um, but my grandmother also knew a lot of people too during World War II. She knew Charles de Gaulle. She met with Harry Truman. She knew Madame Shanghai Shek, and she also knew Wild Bill Donovan. That was the originator or the creator of the OSS, which would later become the CIA. And she really liked Wild Bill Donovan. She said he was a very classy guy, very nice guy, at least to her anyway. So she really liked him. There were people that she didn't like, and one of those was uh, Allen Dulles, the Dulles brothers. If you guys have ever heard of those names, you can look them up. She said that Allen Dulles was the creepiest and scariest guy that she ever met in her life. She did not like to be around him. He really scared the crap out of her. And she really didn't have a whole lot of good things to say about him or JFK and John F. Kennedy. Uh, let's see. She told me a few other stories. I'm gonna keep to myself because I don't think they belong on this channel. Uh, but she made a 50-year career out of serving the public and working for the government. And one of her postings was in Massachusetts, which is why I'm in Massachusetts. She also worked for the Judge Advocate General at some point in toward the end of her career, and she had a 50-year career. And I didn't really know officially. I thought it was just a story that she would tell, though she really didn't tell a whole lot of stories during her lifetime. So I thought that her being in the OSS was just something that she made up, but I don't know why she would do that. She was kind of a serious person. There was something that I remember distinctly growing up. I must have been like 5 or 6 years old, and we had two phones right side by side. One was beige and the other one was black. One day, me being a little kid, and I get into everything, and I pick up that phone, and she had already said, "Whatever you do, do not pick up that phone, that beige phone." She sees that I'm picking it up, and I remember there was no dial tone at the other end of that phone, and there was a lady on the other end saying, "Hello, hello," and my grandmother raced out of that her bedroom, and she's like, "I told you never to pick up that phone ever again. I told you never to do this." And I was kind of confused. Usually there's a dial tone, but this case there wasn't. And she had spoken to somebody on that phone, and then like maybe a few minutes later, a minute or two, she hangs up. I was a little confused, but I went about doing what little kids do, and I never picked up that phone again. And so in 2006, I wanted to do a FOIA request on my grandmother. I wanted to find out if she had all these amazing stories about being in the OSS and who she knew and all these other great things. And I was like, okay, like, I want to really find out what's going on here, because I had remembered that incident with the phones and some other things that she had mentioned along the way. And so I put in a FOIA request, and I get back a mountain of paperwork of my grandmother's. And so, uh, along with that came a list in 2006 of all the members of the OSS. And there are a lot of names that were not known at the time. And they released everybody's name who was associated. And my grandmother's name was on that list. It is on that list. Um, and it just read like a who's who. And my grandmother's commanding officer at the time was a guy named Sterling Hayden, who was an actor. And she had told me this name, and I knew he was an actor, but I didn't really know a whole lot more than that. And so that was her commanding officer during World War II. Now the pieces are starting to fit in place. So the other thing too is that, I had always heard stories about my grandfather and my other grandfather, who was a bombardier in World War II. He's in a B-17 over Europe, and so he obviously he survived the war because I'm here. But my grandmother's cousin was a nurse, and she didn't make it during World War II. She's somewhere over in France. She was a nurse, I believe, with the Red Cross, and then her other cousin was in the Battle of the Bulge, I believe, with the Marine Corps. And I know that the Marine Corps had they weren't as large in the European theater as they were with the fighting the Japanese. So that's, I think, where the majority of the Marines were fighting the Japanese in World War II. But you also had the Army over in the CBI theater and the Pacific as well. So anyway, long story short, my grandfather was a reporter, a newspaper man. He was a photographer before World War II, and he started when he was in high school, in fact. And his father was a sports reporter. And again, like my grandmother really loved baseball, but she actually went to see the 1934 World Series, and I believe the 1931 World Series as well. So she already knew a lot of these ball players on the Cardinals. She said that the Browns were not good, so she didn't want to see them. She didn't like to see the Browns, but she really followed the Cardinals. And then once she got to Washington D.C., she watched a lot of the Washington Senators, and then when she went to Massachusetts, she became a pretty big fan of the Red Sox, and especially Ted Williams and Carl Yastrzemski. And I believe she knew Ted Williams. From what I've heard, it was that my grandfather knew Ted Williams quite well, and they were business partners in some form or fashion, and they were both into photography. So I didn't really press my grandmother too much. The one thing I remember Johnny Pesky telling me is that, like, as he was aging, he said to me that he's like, we're getting older, our memories are not what they were when we were younger, and so that was definitely the case with a lot of the people that I met and knew of the Greatest Generation. And I've talked to you guys a little bit about my own situation growing up. I grew up in a small town here in Massachusetts, a small section of a small town. Waverly Square in Belmont, Massachusetts is primarily where I grew up, and I did have some other formative years in two other communities as well in Massachusetts. But for the most part, I was a New England guy, right? A Boston guy. Waverly Square is a very interesting place. It was really a great place to grow up, and it was only because my grandmother was stationed uh, in Hanscom Air Force Base, and she was a part of the Judge Advocate General's office at the time. Um, and so she had long ago, well before she had retired, she had given up the pilot's license, I believe in the 1950s, and she had started a family. And I'm not even sure like when my grandfather actually stopped being a reporter, or I don't think he was. I think he always was a photographer throughout his life, but unfortunately, I didn't get to meet him. He had passed away really kind of like before I was born, and my other grandfather too. And unfortunately, he passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease. So I'm a real big advocate of trying to find a cure for Lou Gehrig's disease, and figuring out how that actually starts, and seeing if there's anything that can be done to prevent it, if possible, or a cure. Belmont and Waverly Square is, a lot of people say Belmont is a very ritzy place. It may be the case, it may be, but what I remember of Belmont, and especially Waverly Square where I grew up, was that it was a blue collar section, a blue collar neighborhood. There were all sorts of different kind of people. There were a lot of former mafia members from the Angelos. There were just a lot of regular, average, everyday people, and a lot of people in the neighborhood. They had settled in the neighborhood going back decades, so everybody knew each other. I was so used to hanging out with elderly people. Let's just face it, like, my grandmother and I were two generations apart. Very rarely did we ever see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. I mean, we were two generations apart, and she grew up in the Great Depression in Iowa. And I never really understood a lot of things that she did. As I grow older, I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. But then other things, I'm like, she was nuts. And I think my dad and my uncle really kind of saw that too. Like there was something not correct, not right. And I was like, could that be from World War II? Like, or is it just her upbringing? Now, the apple usually doesn't fall far from the tree for a lot of people, right? Like I'm a lot like my father, and maybe even my mom, and definitely I have bits and pieces of my grandfather and my grandmother, and because I heard a lot of stories growing up of my grandfather, and his career in journalism. I very early on, as early as the seventh grade for me, I always knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be an artist. I was already an artist in high school. So that's what I decided to do, mostly because of my grandfather. And he was very influential to me, even though I have never met him before. And at some point, that will happen, I'm sure. I'll have to pass on for that. But I always heard all these amazing stories, and in my neighborhood, everybody knew each other. It was that kind of neighborhood. Again, like I said, and I had a very difficult I had a difficult childhood. I'm not going to say it was easy. A lot of drug issues, not with me, not personally with me, but with my parents, with my dad, and alcohol issues and all this other stuff. And me being disabled with cerebral palsy, and later on I was diagnosed with dyscalculia, which is it's kind of like I don't know how to explain it. I have a severe difficulty with math, but who doesn't, right? Um, it's just mathematical formulas and calculations, time, these things are kind of foreign to me, and so um, I understand a little bit. I don't understand a lot of, like, it doesn't make any sense. Math doesn't. It can't make any sense because I can't really see it on the page. It's just garbled nonsense, and I hate to say that for any any math professors or math teachers out there, or anybody who loves math. For me, it never made any sense whatsoever, and this is really the start of my difficulties in high school. Um, Again, like my neighborhood, I grew up with both a lot of elderly people, which so I was very used to being around all sorts of people, and I had no troubles whatsoever. And I would talk to a lot of older people too, and just hang out with even family members of the greatest generation, and all their stories. So I already had at a very young age an interest in history, just because of being around the greatest generation, my grandfather's generation, my grandmother, my dad had a interest in history as well, and I was always interested in what he had to say and teach me, and so it was really nothing for me to in high school to or even junior high to just hang out with older people and just talk to them, and I'd always have a cup of coffee on the weekends with guys who may have served in World War II or Korea, and just listen to what they had to say and have conversations. Today I think it's a little bit different where you have uh, different generations who are not interacting with each other, and I I really I hate to say this, but I really stopped telling people about my stories, and just the how I grew up, because I was watching a movie called Fury several years ago, like when it came out, and that's about a tank crew in World War II, and uh, I had mentioned, I used to have a cup of coffee with this guy, Jack Moriarty, and I know, like what you're saying, John Moriarty, like Sherlock Holmes. So, I don't know if he was named after John Moriarty, Dr. Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes. I have no idea. But I used to have a cup of coffee with him and his wife, Irma, and he was in a Sherman in World War II, and great guy to talk to. Really, really nice guy, he and his wife. And he had passed away, and I still continued to have a cup of coffee with his wife, and she would tell me all these stories about her husband Jack, and she had said that he was, never the same kind of guy after World War II. Especially, she said that he had a very difficult time being in a car, and I actually had worked in a factory afterwards, after World War II, after his discharge, of basically like a machinist. So he was a machinist. But she said he just had just the horrible, worst nightmares ever, and he was very claustrophobic. And it took years and years and years for him to be in a car, apparently. And he had been injured as well in a Sherman. He had a silver star and a purple heart as well. I believe he was a gunner. But I also knew another guy too, my neighbor, who was also in a Sherman as well. So I had mentioned that I knew these people, and I'd mentioned it on a comment section on YouTube about the movie Fury, and to my surprise, I got someone back saying, "I can't believe you would lie about knowing veterans," and then somebody else saying, "Yeah, right, sure, Jack Moriarty, sure." And so I was really surprised about this because I know a lot of veterans. Veterans are out there and they're in the community, and I grew up with World War II veterans, and in fact I grew up with World War I veterans. I knew a few of those people too. My neighbor was a World War I veteran, and so this is something really shocking. And in fact, if you really think about it. If my grandparents were born in 1918, that would have meant in the 1920s, 30s, and even 40s, we still had Civil War veterans. So today we still have a few World War II veterans that are like 100 years old, but they're still out there. So I was really shocked about this. This, part of me wanted to be angry about this, but the other part of me said, hey, wait a minute. You're dealing with someone who's probably very younger, a lot younger than me. I'm now almost 50. We're dealing with generations who don't really talk to each other. You know, they keep to themselves, really. I think a lot of younger people are isolated or insulated, and that's really too bad. I was angry at first, but then I kind of realized like you're dealing with a younger population that doesn't talk to people, as far as I can see. They don't really talk to older generations as well, and I think uh, looking back on it too, like when I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, I may have been unusual in that I would have no problem talking to older generations at all, and just uh, seeing what they were up to, and getting a sense of what it was like for them growing up and their circumstances. And I also volunteered for a nursing home too. I volunteered for nursing home duty, if you will, when I was a teenager as well. But that wasn't something I well, okay, so I had two choices, and I'll tell you why. I had two choices, and I actually picked two choices for a certain thing that happened to me when I was a teenager. I did something very stupid. In fact, I've done a lot of stupid things, and you don't have to be a teenager to be doing stupid things. You can do something stupid as old as you are. So um, I would get into trouble quite a bit, because I was a very angry person. I was a very, very angry kid. And most of it was because of my lack of education, because my teachers refused to teach me the way I wanted to be taught. I knew that I had certain issues with education, and I let my teachers know about that, and I let a lot of my classmates know about that too. And uh, one day, when I was going into high school, I was being ridden the entire year by a teacher who was a special ed teacher, and they they said that, yeah, because you don't know math, because you have dyscalculia, and one plus one does not equal potato, right? That you need to go to special classes and special ed, and this just absolutely drove me crazy. I was like, okay, whatever, fine. And all my classmates were being taught everything that could get them a good career. I lashed out at one of my teachers, my special ed teacher, because again, like she said, like, you're too stupid to be in high school. After I had said, listen, like I'm not learning anything. I'm getting more and more angry and frustrated that I'm being held back, because the teacher thought that I was, again, in her words, too stupid to be in high school. So I punched her. I punched her in the face, and for a reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? And I found out. I found out, and so I got suspended. I got thrown out of school, essentially, and I had to sue the school system because I felt like I was not getting fair treatment from the teachers. In fact, I knew I wasn't. They were inflating my grades so my grandmother would not go after them. I had a meeting with the principal, and my grandmother was there, and the principal yelled at my grandmother, and I tore this principal a new one, and essentially, I said to him, I was like, listen, like I may be able to get away with that for a short time, but I'll always deal with that with my father. I was like, you can't, you will not do that. You will not yell at an elderly person, especially a World War II veteran. So that just kind of spiraled out into harassment and other things through him and through other teachers who knew that I was disabled. And it's one of the things, like, nobody in the working world really cares if you're disabled. They care if you can get the job done. But when you're 15 or 14 or 13 years old and you know that there's something wrong, and you can't really diagnose yourself, you don't know what it is. Like, I didn't really know that I had dyscalculia, and I wasn't diagnosed until late in high school. And by that time, like, they weren't entirely sure. In fact, they probably, I mean, they said, yeah, you have dyscalculia, but can we really prove it? I'm like, I don't even know what that means, right? But I knew early on, maybe like in the first or second grade, I knew that I was learning differently from my peers. I really enjoy today. I really enjoy kind of like following what my former classmates have done in their lives. I've always gone to a reunion. I've never missed a reunion. This is kind of interesting because for me, maybe it's like a big FU to the Belmont school system because I have never missed a reunion, and the reason why is because I had to sue the Belmont school system to get back into Belmont High School. And while I was doing that, and I had won my case, because it was found out that they refused to teach me correctly. They didn't want to. They had a bias against me because, first off, I was a jackass. Anybody that I went to high school with and junior high school with, you guys will definitely tell me, and you probably have told me to my face that I was a jackass in school, and you guys could definitely attest to that. And I do talk to a lot of my classmates today. So again, like, you're dealing with a goofball and a jackass at the same time. I loved to hang out with my friends and those who collected cards with me, and there were a number of my classmates who collected a lot of sports cards. And there's one classmate in particular, actually two of them, I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about today. I wasn't entirely sure that I wanted to go in this direction and mention this classmate or this particular card because of privacy reasons. But I got the green light. And so today I wanted to mention this gentleman right here. This is Patrick Rissmiller, and we went to school together. And I haven't seen Patrick in decades, but I was always proud of him and what he was able to accomplish. And I'm very proud of my other classmates too. I just want to let you guys know that I always think about my classmates on maybe like a monthly basis or so. It's never really too far out of my mind that I'm not thinking about this person or that person, or what my former classmates are doing now. Most of them have obviously they have jobs, they have families, they have kids, and their kids are now. I think most of them are like in high school or whatever, because time flies. So Patrick here, he followed his dreams. He had a 10-year career in the NHL, and I'm sure he worked his tail off to realize his dream of being in the NHL. And I always wanted to tell him, hey, listen, bud, I'm proud of you. I really am. And I wanted to just kind of like see how he was doing as well. And I wasn't sure how to do this because it's been a long time. And this actually happens to be a 2003 Upper Deck. I again, like, I have a few modern cards in my collection, but the majority of my collection is uh, vintage related. And in fact, I've told you guys why I'm into vintage, and I'll tell you a little bit later on. I'll remind you again. So I found this card, and I was like, uh, going on Facebook and saying, "Hey, listen, like, does anybody know how I can reach Patrick? I want to share this card with him. I want to send it to him and see if he'll autograph it for me." And it is a very meaningful card in my collection, just because Patrick and we actually had uh, science class together in the sixth grade, and I think maybe one or two other classes. But um, another guy I went to school with, Keith, he had mentioned that he could get in contact with Patrick and have this done for me. And so, Keith, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I know Keith was really big into hockey as well. And from what I remember, that he was actually quite good as well. So, um, you know, a lot of what I do here on YouTube and other platforms is try to entertain and especially teach other people about the history of the hobby, or card collecting, or history, or science, or anything connected to sports cards. And for me, sports cards just isn't about the value of them. That's really, if there was like a 1 through 10 list, the value of my sports card collection and the cards that I have, it's about a 10. So really the number one thing about my hobby, the way I like to enjoy it, is with other people, and tell other people about the history and all this other good stuff. But this is a little bit different because there's a connection here. And a lot of other cards that I have in my collection, there is a connection to the player that I had maybe done business with, done some portraiture for, or whatever the case may be. So I actually do know or knew a lot of the ball players from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, through the 1980s and 90s. And I'm largely retired from commercial art and doing portraits and stuff for these guys, and a lot of those were commissions. Most of what I did was through commission. So, I really got to know a lot of these older ball players, but I don't really talk about it much. I don't really talk too much about my own history here, and I was kind of nervous. Really, I didn't really want to get too much into this because I wanted to respect Patrick's privacy, and I know he's still. I believe he's a scout today. I know he's still within the NHL in some form or fashion, but I wanted to respect his privacy, and I didn't really want to say a whole lot about my own history. But it is deeply important to why I collect cards, because I had such a hard time in school that sports cards were an outlet for me, to try to deal with the fact that A, I was disabled, B, I was being treated unfairly as far as I was concerned at a young age, not really able to learn the things that I wanted to learn, and really kind of be separated from my friends, and that's really the cause of a lot of my anger back then. and I was very quick with I was very quick with a punch. If I didn't like what you guys had to say, I'll come to the fists. I've mellowed out considerably over the years, but I still have a very quick anger when it comes to injustice, and I mean true injustice, not like perceived. I always kind of wondered how people get into their professions as they do. Is it something that we say, yeah, I'll try this, I'll try that. I wanted to be a writer, and I and being a sports writer as well, as an investigative journalist, because of my grandfather. Because the where does the seed get planted, right? I have no idea. For me, it was my grandmother and my family mentioning stories about my grandfather, and uh, you know I always wondered in what direction that I was going to go into, because I had no idea. I was at one point, my father had died when I was in high school, and I'll tell you exactly uh, why that happened in another video. But uh, you know, I was 17 years old, and all of a sudden I had no parents, and again, I'm physically disabled, and I have uh, no future. College wasn't expected of me. I went to college, but it wasn't. Nothing was expected. You know, and so again, I was very lost. Things came together, and a lot of that had to do with sports cards. That was my outlet. I really didn't drink much. I'm not good at it. I don't have any practice. I don't smoke. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. So everybody needs an outlet, and I always wondered, like, what was I gonna do at that time? I was already an artist. I just in high school. I just started to be a writer, and really kind of following my grandfather's footsteps. But I didn't know how long that would last, and so I was kind of like searching and searching and searching, and I found a foothold, but nothing is certain in life. There's no guarantees in life at all. You have to try. Even when it comes to this YouTube thing and being a content creator, I always tell you guys, uh, try it. See if it fits. See if it's for you. It might not be. I only got into being a content creator because of Dustin, the personal sports card dad. Back in the pandemic, I was on Dustin's show, and he had mentioned to me, he was like, listen, like, you might be very good at this. You should give it a try. And I hemmed and hawed for months. I think that was in June of like 2020. And it probably took me, or maybe 2021. Dude, the years fly by, trust me. So it took months and months and months, and I was like, I'm not entirely sure. I don't have the voice for it, and I don't really have the face for it either. So I chose December 7th, 2021, to officially do my first video, and it hasn't been disappointing. I'll tell you that. It's been very interesting. I often wonder what my great uncle would be saying about this right now, and he was into radio back in the 1930s and 40s, and at that time when he was in the radio, you needed to go to a radio station and get a job, whereas today all you need is a computer, a microphone, and not even that really. You can have one of these things too, right? And that's really all you need, and to start a channel. Whether or not you stick with it is up to you. What you want to do with it, again, is up to you. I'm in a very niche market, if you will, and I do a lot of vintage sports cards, and I like to talk about history and economic history and science and everything else associated with a sports card. And so I always recommend and encourage those who want to get into this and to be a content creator, start a channel. Just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it, and see. Again, like, what you want to do. You don't have to do sports cards. You don't have to do what I do. You can do anything you want under the sun. It's really up to you. I would say though, lower your expectations and then see what comes of it. Because again, it's not for everybody. And I've been on here now for 4 years, right? 3-4 years now, and I don't have 1,000 subscribers. I love the subscribers that I have, and I've worked very hard for those subscribers. And thank you guys. Like, I really appreciate it. I wasn't entirely sure. I didn't know where I'd be, in life, let alone here on this platform. And again, like, you never know what's going to happen in your life and what direction it's going to go into. Like, Patrick's here, and is it the luck of the draw? I have no idea. I mean, it's hard work. This is hard work for me. For some people, it's very easy, I'm sure. But we all have different skill sets. And what is easy for me might not be easy for you. And for me, buying vintage sports cards it's a passion of mine that goes well beyond money. Again, like, I bought and sold a lot of vintage sports cards when I was a teenager so I could go to college. And that's how I paid for college. And I sold a lot of stuff too. I actually had this when I was a teenager, and this is a copy that I recently bought. And so, again, like, you never know in which direction your life is going to take you. And if I were to tell a 14 or 15-year-old me who is just really starting out to collect vintage sports cards, and tell that 14-year-old or 15-year-old me, this is what I've added to my collection. This is what you can do if you have, dedication and hard work. This is what you can accomplish. And that 14 or 15-year-old me would probably be like, yeah, sure, okay, fine. I don't believe you. But, a little bit of hard work, a little bit of education, and you can go a long way, right? You don't have to go to college to be successful. You just need determination and hard work. I didn't go to college per se. I went to a technical trade school, which was the equivalent of a college, for signage and design. And I'm still in that field for the most part. I have 3 different professions. My love is writing, and I still on occasion do some artwork for businesses and other people. But for the most part, I really haven't done a whole lot of artwork for ball players. I've known a lot of ball players in my day, and I don't really share their stories either, just for the fact that a lot of what they said was off the record. And being a writer is a very precarious profession to begin with. I grew up where everybody read the newspaper in my family. And the first thing that I would see in the morning when I was a kid was my father reading the newspaper. So naturally, if he was reading the newspaper, I would read the newspaper. And I think that was also a part of, why I wanted to be a reporter or a writer to begin with. It was one of the reasons. Again, you also have to have an interest as well. And I'm not entirely sure if a lot of young people have interest in reading newspapers. Our journalism in America is really at a down point. It's not good. It's something that we really need to clean up. Journalism is, and I don't know if I'm the guy to do that. I kind of doubt it. You also have to have standards for yourself too, and be an ethical person to be a journalist. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of ethical people in journalism anymore. We have a few, but not many. A lot of people are yes men, yes girls in journalism. And I've noticed a huge slide in the profession to begin with. Just everything from grammatical mistakes to things that are just, fake news. So I get very upset when I see these things because I've worked so hard to become an accurate journalist, but also it's my name attached. And one of the things I did very early on was not use my real name for most of my articles early on, or things that I was attached to, because journalism can be dangerous, especially the form of journalism that I do. And I didn't want to either get my family members in hot water. I wanted to separate uh, my profession from anything that could happen to them or or my friends as well. So I had to separate myself. And at some point when I'm a very old man, if I ever am a very old man, I'll um I'll explain a little bit more as to what I had been investigating and writing about. It's also a reason why I really kind of went into vintage sports cards too, and why the hobby is so important to me. And everybody needs a hobby, and for me, I've really, I think, done very well in the hobby. And what I mean by that is that I've been able to grow as a person because of the people that I've met along the way and the information that I have gained, the knowledge that I've gained through the hobby, through collecting cards. Whoops. Cards like this, for example, right? So every purchase that I've made, there's a reason behind it. And so I've always wanted to build something, and I built a collection that I could be proud of. And I think at the end of the day that you need to be proud of what you have been able to accomplish and build in your life, and the people that you meet along the way. You know, sometimes you'll come across the jerk every once in a while, but for the most part, I think in the hobby, uh, there are a lot more good people out there and a lot more good instances. Uh, Unfortunately, today we just get bad, just bad news. Uh, I think a lot of it is crabs in a bucket. There are a lot of really decent people out there, and a lot of people who um, have a positive message and something that you might need to hear. Also, you do need to hear the truth, and sometimes the truth is not great. It's not good. Um, again, I've learned so much, not even just through the sports card hobby, but through my own life and my own perspective of the things that I've gone through. And it could have turned out very badly. In fact, it really could have. I knew I was kind of going down the wrong path in life, and it was only through the Boy Scouts and my scouting leaders. Shout out to Mr. Salmon. He was a former cop and Vietnam veteran, and Mr. Tobin as well. And it was through them and my father that got me into the right direction, the right course in life. And again, my cousins as well. So one of my cousins ended up, he knew that had a great aptitude for artwork, and very early on. And there was I didn't, again, like I said, there was no expectation for me to go to college at all. It's not like I didn't have bad grades. I had very good grades, but nobody had. It was just low expectations all the way, right? So he had said something to me that I've never forgotten. And he's like, I don't want you to go another summer without doing anything. And so he actually had connections through a college, Batera School of Art, in fact, and he got me into there. And it was it was probably the best thing that could have happened, honestly. That school no longer exists, and it's another story altogether. But college isn't for everybody. I think we need more tradesmen. Education and is very important, vitally important. Not all your education. Some of your best education is going to come from other sources other than brick and mortar. I'm still learning, and up until the time that I was on Dustin's show back in, I believe, 2021, very first time, I didn't know anything about YouTube or how to start a channel. I had to learn on my own. But and sometimes like you're gonna make mistakes in life. You're gonna. I I always make mistakes, and I'm not always correct. And I hopefully I learn from them, and I hope you guys learn from them too. And I think the hobby has a lot to teach us. I've always said this. I think that whenever you make a mistake, it's a perfect example or a perfect time for you uh, to relearn uh, where you went wrong. Now, if you continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, that's a different story altogether, right? That's a you problem. So I remember like when I first got into vintage sports cards back in '92. This was prior to the 1994 strike. There was already a hockey strike. Again, like I didn't know a whole lot about hockey. I used to watch it on TV with my dad, either the Bruins or sometimes when the Bruins weren't on, it would be the Hartford Whalers. So my cousin actually, he kind of like showed me the ropes of hockey, and I really got into hockey. And he later said like he's like I'm sorry I got you into pro sport or whatever it was back in the day, 1991 pro sport or pro set. Yeah, that's it, pro set. The hockey cards. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed those cards, and I enjoyed learning as I went along too about the players. And sometimes it's really the only way you're going to learn is to make mistakes. And so I've always been a big fan of hockey, but even because like he really got me into collecting hockey cards. And again, I would have loved to really kind of sit down with Patrick, have a beer with him, and just ask him questions about and what it was like to play, and uh, how he knew that that's what he wanted to do for his profession. And so I don't always get to see my classmates. I don't miss a reunion. We haven't had one in a while. I think it's because of the pandemic. But a lot of my classmates are on Facebook and other platforms, so I do get to talk to them and just kind of follow what they're doing. And you never know again like in what direction your life is going to go into or what profession you're going to go in. And to me, I think that's very interesting how people get into their professions, right? I mean, nobody ever says like, yeah, when I grew up, I want to be an accountant, right? It's usually like I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a cop. My buddy Mike is a cop. He's been a cop for a long time, and that was actually a profession that I actually tried to get into. And Mr. Salmon, my scoutmaster, kind of pulled me aside one day and said, "Continue writing. Don't be a cop." And I think that was the correct thing is not for me not to be a cop. I don't think it would have turned out very well for me, tell you the truth. But Mike apparently likes it. And whatever you think of cops, it's a very difficult profession. There's been a lot of sports players who have been cops, and it, it's a profession that it used to be noble in a lot of people's eyes, and especially here in Massachusetts, we've had so many problems with police officers. I don't want to get into it, but if anyone's heard about the Karen Reed case, it's just disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful. I guess thank God for honest people and journalists too. And I know, you know, journalism is also another profession that takes a bad rap too, and rightfully so. There's bad people in all professions. Doesn't matter if it's being a police officer or a journalist or a member of the military. Bad people are everywhere in every sector of society. But I want to think that there are more good people and people in their professions for the right reasons than there are bad. The bad people, they just need to be rooted out and called out. And I think Raul from AIH Sports and Dan the Card Man, John Sports Cards and Collectibles, I think those guys have really done a very good job of calling out the bad when they see it. And even Mike Junkwax Hero has done so too and reported on it. And I think Dustin maybe a little bit. But I would have never met any of these people. I would have really never interacted with any of them had I not tried this out. And you know, I'm never gonna say I'm very good at this, but I'm been here now for what 4 years, 4 years now, since 2021, December 7th, in fact, and I'm still plugging away. I'm still going to continue to try to at least give you guys information and forgotten information and forgotten ball players and cards, and really kind of have fun. Just have fun with this. You know, I'll encourage you guys to start a channel, and if you do, I'll plug you. You know, and Jake from Wax Pack Wisdom and Matt from Providence. He's a dealer. Those guys, I really enjoy their channel. Well, Jake's channel, and Jake has Matt on, but Matt has been a really awesome dealer to do business with, and I'll always plug these guys. And if there's anybody else that I may have forgotten about or not mentioned, just let me know in the comment section. In fact, I had a very good 2025 so far. It was a great year for me personally, collecting wise, and going to the national. If you're a card collector and you haven't gone to the national, you might want to try it. Like just go and you'll have a blast, I'm sure. I've been to a few nationals now, and 2025 I got to meet a lot of great collectors, a lot of great YouTubers as well. So when I was at the Shriners this year, I think it was actually better than the national, and the national was pretty fun, but that was also stressful because there were so many people there. And I'm just not talking about the cards, right? You can buy cards anywhere, right, because of eBay and auctions and stuff. The best part about, I think, either the national or actually the Shriners in particular, wasn't the cards. It was the people, and the people that I met, my fellow YouTubers, and Jake from Wax Pack Wisdom and his wife Abby put together a really nice get together at Apothecary Ales and Brewery in North Reading, and that was a blast. I really loved it, and I hope that continues to be a tradition in the future. If you're listening to me, Jake, let's do that again next year, and hopefully a little bit, few more people come. Dan from Dan's Vintage PC was also there. I was really fortunate to have gotten to talk to him, and right outside there was a Model A, I believe it was 1930 Model A, right outside of the Apothecary Ales and Brewery, and I hadn't seen one of those in a long time, but I really, again, like I really love antiques, and I love antique cars, and so that really brought back some memories for me, just being around a lot of antiques and stuff. And I think for me personally, it may be yet another reason why I collect vintage sports cards, and it is because I've always had this fascination with anything old, and the great stories that my family members have told about what it was like growing up in the 1920s or 1930s or 40s or 50s, and just their experiences overall. And so I think that you have to have that spark, right, in you. And so it was already there by the time I was a young teenager, like 12, 13, 14 years old, collecting vintage. And it was a lot easier when I was a teenager collecting vintage cards. And so, I'm not just saying that it was a lot easier where obviously, like today we have eBay, whereas like when I was a teenager, There was no eBay. This wasn't even a thing. Nobody would have ever thought about doing this in a million years. What I mean was easier is that we had our local card shops, and uh, again, I was very lucky. I was very fortunate when I was a teenager too to have um, gone to, say, Hall's Nostalgia, their auctions, and meeting all these older collectors who really took me under their wing and taught me the ropes of how to do business, how to talk to people, how to make deals, what cards were, again, valuable or not, or who the players were. And so I was very fortunate in that aspect, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way too. You know, uh, I was coming from a clean slate of vintage. Again, I made a lot of mistakes, but then I learned a lot about the players and the cards too, and I just dove head on into that stuff. Remember, I'm starting out as a 12, 13 year old, and then I got straight into vintage when the 1994 baseball strike happened, because I did not like the direction that baseball was going. I didn't like the ball players, and I didn't like the owners, but I still wanted to collect cards. And I got into vintage cards, and then I started, again, I started to do artwork for all these ball players. I went to um, the the Red Sox and the Braves historical associations, their reunions. I contacted a lot of ball players. The first ball player I actually contacted was Eddie Yost, who is he lived essentially like right down the street from me at one point, and I got to meet him, and then Johnny Pesky, and then all these other guys followed, and it was they were like, we'll introduce you to this guy. Here's this guy we'll introduce you to, and I got to talk to a lot of these guys, and I formed friendships this way, and like people come and go, right? I mean that's life, but I've met uh, a lot of great people this way, a lot of celebrities, and it just for me it's normal. It's a normal thing to meet celebrities, and I don't get like all starry eyed. They're just people, right? But one of the cards that I did pick up early on was this card right here. This is 1955 Al Kaline. Right, so I never met Al Kaline in person, unfortunately. Um, but I did have this, and I did sell it. And today, in fact, what happened was that I I went to a card show this morning, and I'm looking around, and it happened to have been like all Pokemon, and I'm like, what the heck is I I don't know what Pokemon is. Like I've heard of it, but I have no idea. It could have Pokemon to me could be like a UFO just dropped right in front of me, and I'm like, what is this? Like I have no idea. So it was all Pokemon stuff, and it was, I hate to say this for all of you guys who are into Pokemon, but I was in the Pokemon hell. Everywhere I went was Pokemon. I'm like, where are the baseball cards at? Like, and this is one of the things where uh, generations don't understand other generations, right? Every generation has its own cares, worries, fears, hopes, and dreams. And my worry is that I'm gonna end up going to hell someday, and I'm gonna be surrounded by Pokemon. Now I joke about that, but I don't understand Pokemon at all, and I don't think I ever will. Probably because of my age. And when I was a young kid, there was a lot of older people who said, "You're a stupid kid. What do you know, right?" Or like, whatever. And um, I'm sure there are a lot of young people who are like, "You're a stupid adult, right? What do you know, right?" So unfortunately, a lot of generations we don't really talk to each other like we used to. Things changed after 9/11. The country was a lot different before 9/11 happened, and my generation, obviously we saw that happen. Um, we know what the change was like before and after 9/11, just like my grandmother and my grandfathers. Uh, they saw a different world altogether before Pearl Harbor and after Pearl Harbor. Whereas when my grandmother would talk to me about Pearl Harbor, she knew exactly where she was. She said there was a change. She knew it, but trying to explain it to me is different because I didn't, you know, I didn't grow up in the 1940s or 1930s. Um, my friends would probably say otherwise, but uh, my aunt or my dad or my uncle, they they knew exactly where they were when JFK was assassinated, and I'm sure they saw a change before and after in the country. Right, obviously my dad. I've talked to you guys about my dad being in Haight-Ashbury in the late 1960s and knowing Janis Joplin and all of them. Uh, for so the the one interesting thing, like, I don't really like to talk about this kind of stuff. I am now because I just don't give a shit anymore. But I used to never really talk about this stuff because I had spoken to a boss about me knowing a lot of these ball players, and he kind of said, like, well, I can't relate to anything that you're saying to me. I can't relate to you as a person. Essentially, is what he's telling me, because I knew all these ball players and these celebrities, and it really didn't dawn on me, that, that other people can't relate, right? So, um, as collectors, you guys go to shows, you guys get to meet all these ball players. For me, it was just business, like knowing Monty Irvin or, Sam Jethro or, you know, XYZ ball player, right? That I would do business with. And for me, it's just business. And really kind of just listening to what they had to say and writing a story, right? And a lot of times these stories were off the record, but I still wanted to know. I still wanted to find out, right? Johnny Pesky or Bobby Dorr or Dom DiMaggio or whoever. So I never really put two and two together. That what my former one of my former bosses was saying is, like, I can't relate to what you do as a profession. I don't understand it. He's like, why would anybody want uh, to get to know a ball player, or anything like that? And I was just like, well, they're just people, you know. It's just their profession. That's all it is. And we go and we enjoy sports. Like, he enjoyed sports too. But and that was it. That was it for him. So, um, other people might not be able to relate to you as a card collector. They might not be able to relate to what is going on in especially the modern hobby right now. Um, if you had somebody from the outside who doesn't collect cards, doesn't know a thing about the hobby or collecting cards whatsoever, maybe they're like, your average person that just they don't have any interest in that, but they may follow sports. If they get into the hobby, if they go to a card show, if they watch anything on YouTube about what's going on in the modern hobby with Dr. Beckett or Jeff Wilson, if they watch any of this stuff, right, or PSA, they'd probably shake their head and be like, why would I want to be a part of this? This looks like the Wild West. It looks like nonsense. A lot of drama. And a lot of people don't want drama in their lives. They have enough of it, right? Most people who are in the hobby actually don't tune in or pay attention to what's going on in the YouTube hobby. I think that's the majority of people. Just have no idea what's going on in the hobby based on what's going on in the YouTube space. I think it's a very small percentage of collectors are actually on YouTube for any great amount of time. And I only went on to YouTube back in, say, 2019, 2020, partly because I had a friend who had passed away suddenly from cancer, and he was diagnosed. My buddy Bob, within a month of being diagnosed, he was 6 feet under. Pancreatic cancer is a real tough cancer, and if it's not caught early, then it's almost a death sentence. I had that going on, and some other things as well, which I'm not going to discuss here right now. But I almost quit being a card collector, and being a card collector for me is, I think, maybe a little bit different than for the average person. It really is an escape for me, and it's my education as well. I spent a lot of time with my buddy Bob, going to shows and auctions and stuff, and just having a really great time. And all of a sudden he's gone, and I got really nobody to share the hobby with. So I kind of like went on YouTube to see, like, what can I learn, right? I find this, and a lot of people just grousing back and forth about being ripped off and other stuff, and how bad the hobby is. And again, like, I think that's obviously a part of it, but the other part too, like, there's a better part, I guess. It's depends on what it depends on what you get out of the hobby too, right? So, if all you're seeing, it's the same thing with the news. If all you're seeing is bad things in the news, you're gonna become depressed. You're gonna be like, what? Why would I want to get involved in this? Or, like, everything is bad, everything is negative. Maybe it's designed as the press. Maybe that's designed to make you depressed all the time, so you don't fight for what you think is correct or right. Like, I don't know if that's true on YouTube, but I this year in particular, I mean, it's been a great year for me personally with picking up cards and meeting people. Uh, Obviously, like, not everything is great on in the hobby, and it needs to change. And I'm not sure how that is going to play out. I don't think anybody does at this point. Is everything in the hobby bad? Absolutely not. But today I went to another card show after I bolted out of that show with the Pokemon stuff, and I went to another card show, and I was really hoping to see Matt from Providence and Jake from Wax Pack Wisdom. I really enjoy, like, hanging out with those guys and talking to them. And Jake has a great channel, and he's got a great collection. He really does, and same with Matt too. And I've done a lot of business with Matt over the last couple of years, and he's just a great dealer, someone that you can do business with. And I'm not being paid to plug anything. If you're on YouTube, you're not gonna make a lot of money on YouTube. I can guarantee that. Um, Again, like, you have to do this stuff for the right reasons, and just have fun with it, right? But I was at this other show, and I picked up this card again. I really wanted this card in my collection again. A lot of the stuff over the last year or 2 years, I've had to I've had in the past, and there's some regrets about selling a lot of stuff. And then, like, I had always kind of thought too that because I had purchased a lot of vintage cards when I was a kid, that I could always purchase the card again at maybe the same price. But that obviously hasn't been the case, because a lot of cards that I purchased when I was a teenager, I can't afford anymore. The hobby is pricing me out, and that is not a good thing, I think, for anybody. I don't know exactly what you can do about it right now. That might be a future video. But again, like, I'm in the hobby for completely different reasons than money. Again, it's an escape for me. I'm not thinking about things I shouldn't be thinking about. I am learning something new almost every day. I'm interacting with really great people, people that I would want to have a beer with, right? People that I just want to, chill out with and talk to about the hobby. And I think that's really the thing that I enjoy most outside of the cards. And this is another card that sorry about the glare. This is another card that I really wanted to add to my collection, and it was years that I had really kind of thought about adding this card. I just couldn't do it for whatever reason. I picked up his Duke Snider's 54 Bowman years and years ago. I think I told you guys about that story, where I put down some money to a dealer that I'm still friends with, and as collateral, I guess, or just like a placeholder. And I didn't see that dealer for years and years and years, nor did I see the card. So I picked up that card, and that's a valuable lesson, really. The hobby has a lot to teach you if you want to learn, right? And it was just also too that I knew Duke Snider, and I did a lot of artwork for him. He was a great guy to talk to, and so I wanted to just kind of tell you guys thank you so much. I really appreciate it. These last couple of years on YouTube since December 7th, 2021, they have not been easy. It is not easy to do videos, but I still continue because it is a challenge, and there's a part of me that does enjoy challenges, and this is a great one here, and I hope to continue in 2026. I'll have other videos out, not so much, too many, I think. I'm still trying to solve the riddle of writing a book. it's not easy writing a book, and the one I'm doing is on the T206, and it's up to about 400 pages, and my hat's off to everybody who writes a book in T206. Obviously, they call it the monster, and for a very good reason. And I would consider writing a book on the T206 to be a monster as well. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking around. I know it's almost 2 hours now, but thank you. I really appreciate it. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. And until the next time, I will talk to you later. Have a good one. And to my classmates, guys, I love you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope that all of you are doing very well. And again, until the next time, see you later. Bye.